What if I told you the most dangerous person in the room is the one who thinks they're the smartest, but isn't? Not because they know too much, but because they don't know how little they know. They walk with confidence, speak with arrogance, and act like they're untouchable. But here's the twist that will shake you to your core. Their ignorance is invisible to them. This isn't just a personality flaw. This is a psychological trap, a glitch in the human mind. And while you're doubting yourself, holding back, questioning your potential, they're out there dominating rooms they have no business being in, making noise without substance, leading others blindly because they think they see. Listen closely, because after this speech, you will never again be deceived by false confidence. And more importantly, you will stop underestimating your own intelligence. We're going to uncover the 3 hidden mechanisms that make the uninformed feel wise and how you can rise above the illusion that traps millions. Are you ready to see through the mask? Then buckle up, because the truth is brutal, the science is real, and what I'm about to tell you will change the way you see yourself and everyone around you. Don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more mind-shifting truths like this. This is not just another motivational video. This is a wake-up call. They don't know how wrong they are because they don't even know what they don't know. That's the terrifying truth. The most uninformed people walk around wearing a crown made of their own blindness, convinced it's gold. This is not a personality flaw. This is a deep psychological distortion, a trap of the human mind that rewards ignorance with false confidence. And if you're not careful, it will fool you too. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's an invisible force that makes the least capable individuals feel like experts while silencing the voices of the truly intelligent. The problem isn't lack of intelligence, it's lack of self-awareness. When a person knows very little, they aren't even equipped to recognize their own incompetence. So they build a fake empire of certainty, and they defend it with arrogance, denial, and noise. You've seen it before. Someone who barely understands a subject, speaking louder than everyone in the room. You hear them, but you can't believe what you're hearing. That's not boldness. That's delusion. That's what happens when knowledge is shallow, but ego is deep. Their mind doesn't question, it declares. It doesn't explore, it decides. It doesn't seek truth, it demands attention. And behind all that bravado is a fragile shell, terrified of being exposed. The less they know, the more certain they become. Because uncertainty requires intelligence, doubt requires depth. Only the wise are aware of how much they still have to learn. But the fool walks through life like a king in a world he's never studied. This illusion of intelligence is not just dangerous, it's contagious. In a world addicted to noise, the loudest voice often wins, not the wisest. And so the ignorant rise while the insightful hesitate. Not because they aren't capable, but because they understand complexity. The wise see shades of gray. The fool only sees black and white. And the crowd often mistakes that simplicity for clarity. But it's not clarity. It's blindness disguised as leadership. They're not self-reflecting, they're self-projecting. They build their identities around being right, not being real. And when they're challenged, they don't grow, they attack. Because to admit ignorance would shatter their illusion. And their illusion is everything to them. Without it, they have nothing. So they double down, they shout louder, they dismiss facts, they mock experts, because admitting they were wrong would mean confronting their own emptiness. This is how the mind protects the ego, by wrapping stupidity in the armor of certainty. But that armor rusts, that armor cracks, because truth has a way of breaking through eventually. And when it does, the fool is exposed not just to others, but to himself. That's why they run from growth. That's why they resist wisdom. Because deep down, there's a whisper they're terrified to hear. You're not as smart as you think you are. And that whisper, that's the beginning of real transformation. But only the courageous will listen to it. The rest will cover it with noise, blame, and false pride, because it's easier to pretend than to evolve. It's easier to live in illusion than to step into the fire of truth. You want to rise above the average? Learn to question your own certainty. You want to grow? Start by admitting what you don't know. Intelligence is not a crown you wear. It's a door you open. And the key to that door is humility. Not weakness, not insecurity, but radical self-honesty. Because the moment you believe you've arrived is the moment you stop moving. And the world is filled with people who stopped moving long ago. Their minds froze in place, locked by the lie that they already know enough. Don't be one of them. Tear down the illusion, burn the false confidence, and step into the unknown. That's where real power begins. They walk into rooms like they own them, not because they have substance, but because they have volume. In a world that confuses noise with knowledge, it's the loudest, not the wisest, who often get the spotlight. Confidence has become the counterfeit currency of intelligence. And the terrifying part, people fall for it again and again because we've been trained to respond to certainty like it's truth, when it's often just well-packaged ignorance. They speak with authority not because they understand, but because they don't even realize the depth of what they're missing. That's the paradox. The less someone knows, the more likely they are to speak like they know it all, because there's no friction in their thoughts, no doubt, no hesitation, no awareness of gaps, just unchecked momentum. And people mistake that momentum for mastery. You hear them speak, and at first glance, they sound convincing. But if you listen closely, there's nothing behind their words. No complexity, no nuance, no real insight, just recycled opinions and inflated certainty. Their confidence isn't built on experience. It's built on illusion. And yet the world often rewards it, as we live in a culture that idolizes boldness and punishes quiet wisdom. Those who genuinely think deeply often second-guess themselves, not because they lack clarity, but because they understand the complexity of truth. They aren't unsure because they're weak. They're unsure because they're aware. And that awareness creates humility, but to the untrained eye, humility looks like uncertainty. And in a society addicted to instant answers, uncertainty is mistaken for incompetence. The tragedy is that true brilliance often stays silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because it respects the weight of every word. Meanwhile, empty vessels shout with reckless confidence, and their noise drowns out the very minds that could reshape the world. The voice of wisdom gets lost in the echo chamber of egos. We reach a point where confidence is currency and doubt is a liability. If you hesitate, you're overlooked. If you pause, you're dismissed. And so the world rises on the backs of those who fake clarity, while those with real vision are still mapping the terrain. But clarity without depth is a weapon. It manipulates, it dominates, and it infects minds that crave certainty over truth. They confuse assertiveness with intelligence. But assertiveness without insight is just ego in motion. And that ego is infectious. It teaches others to speak before thinking, to act before learning, to lead before understanding. And soon, entire systems are built on illusion, led by those who believe their own bravado. It's not that confidence is evil. It's that confidence without self-awareness is dangerous. When someone is absolutely certain of something they barely understand, they become blind to all correction. They reject feedback. They laugh at experts. They dismiss facts. And they do it with such force that others begin to believe them, not because they're right, but because they're relentless. This is how false leaders are born. This is how truth gets buried. This is how the masses are misled, not by facts, but by tone. The right voice, the right posture, the right rhythm, and suddenly lies sound like gospel, and truth sounds unsure. That's the trap. That's the danger. That's the reason mediocrity keeps winning. Real intelligence isn't loud, it's deliberate, it's careful. It's uncomfortable with oversimplification. But the modern mind doesn't want complexity, it wants speed, it wants confidence, it wants clean answers in a chaotic world. And in that hunger, it crowns the loud and silences the wise. They win arguments not because they're right, but because they're aggressive. They dominate debates not with logic, but with volume. They don't listen to understand, they listen to reply. And in the end, they walk away thinking they've won, while the room walks away a little more deceived. The smartest minds question everything, including themselves. The loudest fools question nothing, not even their own thoughts. Intelligence is haunted by the weight of complexity, while stupidity dances freely in shallow waters. And here's the painful irony. Those who know the least often feel the most certain, while those who have seen the most carry the deepest doubt. The more you understand, the more you realize how much you don't. Whatever among us, but ignorance has no mirrors, no breaks, no shadows. It just moves forward like it owns the truth. Fools don't seek clarity. They impose their opinions. They don't ask if they could be wrong. They assume they're always right. And they treat their assumptions like facts, packaging delusion in the voice of certainty. The wise are careful with their conclusions. They examine from multiple angles. They challenge their own beliefs. They refine their thinking with humility. But the fool mistakes complexity for confusion. They think doubt is weakness and certainty is strength. So they charge ahead with answers to questions they've never truly understood. Quality. They preach in absolutes. They shout from digital pulpit. They offer advice without understanding consequences. They declare their way as the only way, never realizing how blind they are to everything outside their narrow lens. But it's not just ignorance. It's the conviction that their ignorance is knowledge. That is the virus. That is the disease spreading through conversations, communities, and culture. The blind leading the silent, the misinformed drowning out the wise, the arrogant silencing the aware. Real intelligence carries a kind of hesitation, a pause, a moment of reflection before the answer, because truth is never cheap. Truth costs time, pain, curiosity, and self-awareness. But stupidity doesn't wait. It doesn't wrestle with complexity. It doesn't examine data. It doesn't care about nuance. It sees a headline, forms an opinion, and then spreads it like wildfire. It doesn't ask, it tells. It doesn't learn, it lectures. The truly wise sit in the tension of the unknown. They're comfortable being uncomfortable. They live in the gray because they know life isn't black and white. But that kind of awareness isn't glamorous. It doesn't go viral. It doesn't get applause from the crowd. What gets attention is the fool's confidence. The one who says things with such force, people forget to check if the words make any sense at all. The crowd doesn't want wisdom, it wants entertainment. It wants emotional certainty. And so the fool becomes the performer, the preacher, the influencer, the leader. But behind that curtain is a shallow mind wrapped in thick pride. They don't grow because they don't believe they need to. They don't evolve because they've convinced themselves they've already arrived. They don't listen because listening would threaten their illusion of authority. And in their delusion, they become more than just wrong. They become dangerous. They lead others into darkness with a torch made of ego. And because they sound so sure, others follow. This is why the world is upside down. The ones with questions stay quiet. The ones with answers scream. And no one stops to ask, what is this person building their confidence on? Wisdom or assumption? Truth or trend? Experience or ego? Because when you look closely, most of them are standing on foundations made of sand. One hard question and they collapse. One exposed fact and they panic, but they avoid those moments by never allowing themselves to be challenged. The wise are constantly evolving. They kill their old beliefs when they outgrow them. They don't defend outdated ideas. They don't worship their past opinions. They shed them because truth demands change. But the fool clings. The fool protects. The fool defends to the death, not what is real, but what makes them feel powerful. And so they preach louder, think less, and believe their own noise until it becomes their identity. They build echo chambers around themselves, surround themselves with yes men, and live in a bubble where their distorted view of reality is never challenged. This is how ignorance spreads. It isn't just a personal problem, it's a collective one. In a world where everyone is looking for validation, the ignorant thrive in environments that only affirm their biases. They seek comfort, not truth, and when truth knocks at the door, they turn it away. They cling to what feels safe and familiar, and in that safety, they stagnate, unable to grow, unable to evolve. The more they isolate themselves from differing opinions, the more certain they become that they hold the truth. And the more they isolate themselves, the further they drift from real understanding. Echo chambers breed arrogance. When you hear the same narrow views day in and day out, you start to believe that the world thinks just like you. That's the lie. The world isn't made up of people who think like you. It's made up of people with perspectives you will never fully understand. And unless you're willing to confront the uncomfortable, the challenging, and the new, you will remain trapped in your own mind, forever disconnected from the depth of true knowledge. But the echo chamber doesn't just affect individuals. It affects entire communities, nations, and systems. It creates a dangerous feedback loop where people reinforce each other's ignorance and feed into their delusions. In these spaces, wisdom gets drowned out by noise, and the voice of reason becomes a whisper in a room full of shouting. The loudest are the least informed. They hijack the conversation with their certainty. The voices of true insight become distant, suffocated by the volume of the uninformed, who think their echo chamber is the entire world. It's easy to fall into this trap. It's comfortable, it's seductive, feels good to hear your own beliefs mirrored back at you, to have others affirm your limited view of reality. It feels good to be surrounded by people who think like you, who agree with you, who make you feel right. But this is not growth. This is not learning. This is stagnation disguised as success. True knowledge doesn't flourish in comfort. It thrives in confrontation, in challenge, and discomfort. And if you remain in your echo chamber, you will never grow. You will never see the world as it truly is. You will only see the world as your narrow, limited mind wants it to be. This is the power of feedback. Real growth happens when you allow others to challenge you, when you open yourself to ideas that contradict your own. It's uncomfortable, it's painful, but it's the only way to break free from the illusion of certainty and step into the light of true understanding. If you only surround yourself with people who agree with you, you will live in a world that exists only in your head, a world where you are always right and everyone else is wrong. And in that world, you are blind. The echo chamber doesn't just isolate you from new ideas. It isolates you from the reality of your own limitations. When you surround yourself with people who never question you, you become deaf to your own flaws. You stop noticing when you're wrong, when you're falling into bad habits, or when your understanding is shallow. And that's the most dangerous part. Because when you think you're always right, you stop growing, you stop evolving, you stop improving. And the moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying. It's time to step out the echo chamber. It's time to expose yourself to the uncomfortable, to the unfamiliar, to the challenging voices that will make you question everything you thought you knew. It's time to confront the fact that you might not have all the answers, and that's okay, because true strength lies in the willingness to admit that you don't know it all, that you can be wrong, that you can grow. The ego will try to keep you in the echo chamber, but if you want to rise above the noise, if you want to see the world clearly, you have to break free from the lies you've been telling yourself. Are you ready to open your mind and face the uncomfortable truths, to challenge your own beliefs and step into the unknown? Because if you don't, you'll remain trapped in the prison of your own ignorance, forever surrounded by voices that only tell you what you want to hear. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop growing. It's a dangerous illusion, this idea that intelligence is a static thing, that you either have it or you don't. True intelligence doesn't come from accumulating facts or regurgitating answers. It comes from an unrelenting awareness of how much you don't know. The wise are not the loudest or the most confident. They are the most aware of their own limitations. And that awareness is what gives them power. They understand that to be truly intelligent means to constantly challenge and expand your boundaries. It means knowing that you are never done learning, never done evolving, never done questioning. Those who lack true intelligence live in a constant state of denial. They protect their fragile egos with certainty, refusing to entertain the possibility that they might be wrong. They refuse to face the discomfort of being exposed, the discomfort of confronting their own ignorance. They build walls around their beliefs and guard them like treasures, never realizing that those beliefs are the very things holding them back. But the wise understand the truth. The more you know, the more you realize how much you have yet to discover. They embrace that discomfort, they sit in it, they learn from it, and they grow because of it. True intelligence isn't about collecting facts. It's about developing the courage to face your own limitations, to recognize the areas where you are weak, and to use that awareness to push forward. Every time you think you have all the answers, you stop asking the important questions. Every time you shut yourself off from the truth, every time you close your mind to the possibility that you are wrong, you shut yourself off from the very thing that will lead to your growth. And in that moment, your mind begins to atrophy. You stop evolving. You become stagnant. The world changes around you, but you remain stuck in a prison of your own making. And that is the real tragedy. The tragedy of people who stop growing because they believe they've already arrived. They believe their way is the only way, their truth, the only truth, their beliefs, the only beliefs worth having. The moment you stop questioning is the moment you stop evolving. You begin to die in place. You begin to wither because growth is uncomfortable. Growth requires pushing past the boundaries you've built, stepping outside your comfort zone and confronting the unknown. And most people aren't willing to do that. They don't want to face the discomfort of admitting they were wrong. They don't want to face the vulnerability that comes with being open to new ideas, to new perspectives. But without that willingness, without that humility, you remain trapped in a mental prison. You become the very thing you've been warned about. A person who is so locked in their own ideas that they can no longer see the truth. True intelligence requires self-awareness. It requires understanding that there are areas where you will always be blind. And it takes courage to admit that. The people who are truly intelligent don't have all the answers. They are simply more willing to admit they don't know everything. They are constantly seeking, constantly questioning, constantly evolving. And this is the key, the willingness to learn, the willingness to embrace the discomfort of uncertainty, to sit with it and to grow from it. The people who lack this awareness, who walk through life as though they know everything, are the ones who are truly trapped. They are trapped by their own ego, by their own need to be right, by their own unwillingness to confront the truth. The wise don't avoid their flaws. They face them. They don't defend their ignorance, they challenge it. They don't pretend to know what they don't. They ask, they listen, they grow. And that is the difference. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to constantly question, to constantly examine, to constantly grow. Because the moment you stop doing that, the moment you stop confronting your own limitations, is the moment you stop being truly intelligent. The world will continue to change. The world will continue to evolve, but you will remain the same, stuck in the illusion that you know everything. Are you ready to stop pretending you know it all, to face the uncomfortable truth that you have more to learn? Because until you do, you will never experience the power of true intelligence. Until you do, you will never know the depth of your own potential. The only way forward is through the door of self-awareness, through the willingness to admit your limitations, and through the courage to step into the unknown. Only then will you truly grow. Only then will you break free from the chains of your own ignorance.